So to continue, I'm a firm believer that if you actually like look at people in a, I don't know, I'm a firm believer that if you actually look at people as interesting, you should kind of show it. Or at the very least, you can show them, you can give them a piece that represents you that they could actually reflect on when it comes, reflect on and remember you by it. Sorry, my cats are all over. But so I'm talking about gifts, right? So after a couple of times talking to her, I realized like she kind of like I buy copybooks and I take notes. But then I realized in a weird way, like a lot of people don't really do that. My favorite gift to give people is books, but she's really well read. And books are the easiest way for you to kind of judge what kind of people they are because they never read the book. And I used to be that guy. I used to be the guy that basically takes the book, say thank you, but never actually read it. And I remember like the eyes of the people that would ask me, like, did you read the book? And I'd be like, bah, I didn't. And then how they would be like kind of disappointed. I'm not that kind of guy that gets disappointed, but it shows a lot of who you really are if you're given a book and you don't read it. Even if you read it and you don't really care for it, right? Like in any way you go for it, I'm giving you a book that I like, which is probably going to represent a lot about me. But I didn't think that would work with her, or I didn't think it would be presumptuous of me to kind of like get her a book without knowing the books that she has because she actually takes the time to get books and read them herself. So I got her a notebook and I got her a cute one and I got it to her in orange color, specifically for it to be distinguished from the other book because I saw a couple of copybooks with her that are all black. So and I was like, I told you I'm gonna get you a copybook, and every time you kind of have a thought, maybe you can write it down if you want, do whatever you want with it. But ultimately, we were having this conversation. That's why I thought if I get you a copybook, it would make sense for me to kind of like get you a present. And her response was very, when I say positive, was kind of like, now I'm going to have to do something I haven't done in a while or I've been like avoiding for a while because she kind of knows all these things are the things that she kind of needs to do in order to get out of her head. But anyways, we end up. My bad, my cats are being, I want to say playful instead of another word. So I gave her this copybook and she looked at me and she goes like, I have an idea. And I go like, what is it? She goes like, anytime I think of something, which probably happens normally when we kind of like engage in a certain conversation, she'll write it down and I'll basically continue what she's kind of writing. And I basically kind of add my take on what she's writing. And that way, at the very least, her effort would be a bit minimal. And then I would actually get to elaborate on something that's truly, when it comes to her, a bit of a thing that's in her head, right? So we started doing that, and that's when the articles started coming out, and I started like writing up in the blog, and I go like, okay, so I talked to her about these stuff, but if I were to explain them to her, how would I do it? And then I started writing, and that became something nice because for me, it's very much like direct interaction with the thoughts of other people that I probably have, but I already either understand them or I haven't gotten to them yet. So I started basically just as we started like basically she'd write, I would write, and then basically we'd kind of like have a conversation afterwards where I kind of like explain what my point is, and then we discuss other stuff. And always something kind of highlights. The latest one we had was melancholy, and she was kind of like she mentioned it. And it's funny because every single time we talk, kind of like she gets over a certain feeling and then another feeling pops up. It's kind of like her running through all the actual scenes in her mind and getting over them one at a time, or the weaker scenes are kind of like revealing themselves, or the stronger scenes. I have no idea. Like I haven't asked her about it yet, but I figured if I do, I might actually cause one of those. She literally sometimes would tell me, "Is like, Tariq, please stop talking. My head is hurting." But it's funny because, like, I understand how, because I understand these are basically things that I go through on my own, and I go like, oh, I don't want to be thinking about this anymore. So I could only imagine how anyone would feel when somebody's kind of like isolating everything else that you're doing and focusing on the one thing that you've been avoiding. It's intense. But again, it's like back and forth, like kind of like she starts it, and then she kind of like when she feels uncomfortable, she kind of like tells me. And we're literally just discussing words. We're discussing how words are expressed. We're discussing, for example, today's word, and that's the word I wanted to talk about. Today's word was how. Today's sentence was, how can we get over our past, knowing that our memories are still very attractive, and how can we basically, and that's what she was thinking about, and she writes them. And at first she was just writing like sentence, one, three, four letter sentence, three, four word sentences. But today she kind of wrote like a paragraph and a half because she kind of like got into the vibe of like, okay, so if I'm asking them, I kind of want to know this detail more than the other details that this guy blabs about. It's funny because I really just like talk about the stuff I want to talk about. I have no idea what's on, man, what's going on. So, so today's word that popped out from all she's written was attraction. And I started thinking it was like attraction basically. And the first thing I responded with, because she was like, there are images in her past, memories that she still kind of like holds dear to her. And she feels like the world since then has not measured up to that feeling. It's fun. And most of the time, that's what we go through, right? Like we remember the good memories and we kind of like get out of it. But she wrote attraction as part of her sentence. And I kind of like isolated that for some fucking reason. I don't know. My mind kind of was like attraction. And my response was attra- uh, attraction is based on observation. So the more we observe something, the more we decide how attracted we are to it, the more we realize how attracted we are to it or how unattracted we are to it. So something doesn't necessarily have to repel you, but you could be like, oh my God, this is cool until it's not cool anymore. And then you're indifferent, right? You kind of like you're done, you're over it. And that's basically a glitch I have. I started thinking of attraction from an observation standpoint. And then after that, I naturally went back, I changed my schedule, and I wrote write about attraction on my calendar. I could actually show it to you, but anyways, I wrote about it, attraction in my calendar. And then as I was trying to explain attraction when I was writing to it, when I was talking to her, I was explaining more about the observational standpoint, right? Like if you look at something for 5 seconds, you're going to see a whole lot of stuff, but you're going to see a blurry image of the thing. But if you look at something for a minute, suddenly more details kind of show up. You don't look for the details. You give them a chance to kind of present yourself. It's your mind that's processing. All your eyes are doing is collecting light, right? They're collecting the photons in order to send the information to your mind. But if your mind to your brain, but if your mind is actually interested in something, more details come up faster. And that's basically how some people excel at certain subjects and more than others because they're interested. So like the details pop up and the things that matter and the truth behind why it's happening that's interesting them kind of like becomes a reality and eventually man they grab it. And I was when I was started talking about attraction, that's the thing that came to me. Is like most of what we do is kind of like the images in our head about our memories are kind of like very detailed and very much us observing our past. And then I wrote, the past has already happened. That's why we actually have a fixed image of it. But the present is consistently changing. Like, there is no actual present moment, but there's a present situation that you can grab a hold on. There's a present pattern that you can actually like get more acquainted with. So I figured that if we approach observation from this standpoint and we start actually giving the things in our life their own time, then more details will pop up. And then we'll be able to understand if we're actually attracted to these things or not. And in a way, if they contribute to what we want out of life or not. And all these smaller, like, I don't know, it made sense, man. So I started explaining it, and I used light actually in explaining it, and I also used gravity and Einstein's law of relativity. And I tried my best to kind of like reflect on it myself, on like why would I be attracted to something? And normally it's you're always kind of like attracted on something that's absorbing your light, and sometimes what's absorbing your light is not necessarily the best thing that's happening because whatever energy you have, if something's actually welcoming it, you kind of like be like, oh, all right. And that's in our nature because like we also absorb energy. But if somebody has higher energy levels than the other, then they balance themselves out. Correct? We've heard this all over the place. But ultimately, the more you observe the things that you're actually attracted to, the more you actually allow yourself to enjoy the details or see the details, then the more you either understand where this attraction is coming from or not. But ideally, the end of the conversation was if you just allow the present to form its image before it becomes something that you're going to remember in the future. Or at the very least, create an image, look at the present right now in a way where it will be an image that you'll be able to look back into the future and remember it with the same feelings and these kinds of like little added value that you have when anytime you look at a memory of your past. And I just wanted to say that this is something that's been happening with me. Fucking thank you for listening, dudes and dudettes, whoever you are. Thank you very much. I actually got one comment a couple of days ago. I'm super proud of myself. Thank you.